Yeah, I wish I had that number. I was actually trying to look it up when he said that because I'd seen the Jewish number. I would imagine, though, that the Christian number, if you follow polls in the last few elections, is going to be around the same, 25, 28, up to 32% of Christians that would have probably supported him. Look, there's a blindness going on in this country. I don't know that the media failed. I think the media, in this case, has been very clear of who this man is and who he says he is. I think he's not hidden. You know, we used to think that Islam was this sort of thing in America, was speaking tolerance. But anymore, they're not. They're really letting their true colors show, and I think he did it. And so the sad part is that there is a large audience that has been blinded to this message. They don't want to hear it. On the reverse of that, I think that there's been an audience that has listened to it. And I think, look, the Christian media, I think, could have gotten better. But New York City itself is only about 7% active practicing Christians. It's a very small number, of people that are practicing. So this is a city that is reaping its rejection of God.
Wow, and that's very heavy to think about. It's certainly also interesting when you think about the people in the Jewish community that voted for Mamdani. While we talk about 32%, certainly liberal, left-leaning Jews, but also younger Jews who really jumped on the bandwagon, were influenced by the social media. Now we're seeing the same thing in the Christian community, that younger evangelicals are disconnecting from the Bible, disconnecting from their faith, and certainly then from Israel as a result. Talk to me about how that would influence a vote toward Mamdani, and what are you able to do as Christian media to help to bring them back?
Yeah, so I really loved what the deputy said this morning and what the rabbi said up here and what was said on this. I think one of the things that we have been talking about is these, the institutions, the fundamental institutions in America that have been taken over, and the education institution is one of them. And it's not just the higher education. These ideas, these worldviews are being pushed down into the high school level and all the way down into the elementary level. Excuse me. Took a big swig of coffee and got all the nice little grains in there. But it's really being pushed down. And look, for us as Christians, we have a big issue to deal with. So the American Bible Society just put out their annual report on Bible literacy amongst Christians. 6th year in the row that the number has ticked down of people who understand and know their Bible. I think the rabbi said it the best. We don't know the Torah, we don't know the New Testament scriptures, and it's so easy for us to be manipulated. And in Christian media has to really take up that banner, because Christian media has been, look, I'm going to say it, I get in a lot of trouble in the U.S., has been so focused since the 90s on this seeker-driven movement. That's heresy, okay? You find that nowhere in the New Testament. Evangelism is what we're called to do, but evangelism comes out of discipleship. No discipleship, no evangelism. You don't know your Bible, you shouldn't be talking about it. And that's what happens today. Christian media has to get that message back. We have to take that to the church in America, that our purpose is to disciple people, which simply means they know their Bibles so well they live it out.
And speaking of that, before you came here to the country, you actually put out a press release about your visit. And you talked about the need to come to Israel to know the Bible and to understand what's happening, not from afar, not from a distance, but from the land. How important is it for the Christian media to be here, and maybe more so if you can reflect backwards on what's happened in the past several days? What do you think was one of the most important things that you all saw that is important to be reported abroad?
Yeah, look, nothing beats personal contact. Nothing beats personal relationships. Nothing does that. The success of the NRB convention back in the States is a success all about personal relations. We get everybody under the roof. We cover the issues. But the big thing that goes on is to be able to network, look somebody in the eye, shake somebody's hand, hug somebody's neck, pray for somebody, have somebody pray for you. Nothing beats that personal relationship, and you can't get that if you don't get out of your desk or out of your own echo chamber and get over here and meet people. And I'll tell you one thing, this is, I think, my 7th trip since October 7th. I'll tell you one thing that really hits me, and it hit me again walking around. I brought my daughter with me the first time walking around the city here, is you look at this city, you wouldn't know that there's a war going on, okay? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean in a good way, because in this city, you walk around and you see Muslims and Jews and Christians living together, getting along, wanting to flourish, wanting to be happy, wanting to have family. That's what the real Israel is. You don't see what often is over here in the U.S. You don't see this violence. You don't see, nobody said a word to me as an American who doesn't speak any Hebrew and tried to, ask questions and order gelato. Everybody, it was nice and friendly. We were at a restaurant. That restaurant had, again, all 3 faiths were there.
You saw there, and what is the main point of visiting an area like that for the Christian media?
Well, I think the Christian media needs to visit that area, because really in that area you do see some of the separations of the differences, but you see it mainly on the Muslim side. I haven't seen a single Jewish community that said no Muslims allowed. I've gone past many of the gates of Islamic communities that have that sign up there. So you see that. But you also get a see and a feel for the land. You understand how small this country is. We were all up there standing on that lookout. I think Yossi calls it Trump's lookout now. But you see how small this country is. But I'll tell you, one of the things that we've been working on lately is just teaching, again, the biblical history. So I take a map. We all have it. Get your Bible, pull it out. There's maps in the back that say Joshua's conquest, right, of Canaan. Look at the map. Look at the end of it. Here's how God divided up this country of the entire earth that he created. This is where he chose. This is what he designated. The Apostle Paul tells us the promises of God are irrevocable. He gave this land. Modern day Israel is less than half of what God promised and gave to ancient Israel, to the 12 tribes. This is what God gave to them. And you see that when you get out in the country and you understand that, and people have to understand that date. That's why I said, look, I understand President Trump has done so much good work, and he's done so many great things. He brought the hostages home. Give him a big round of applause for that. He got them home. He's getting the bodies home. But as Paul said, the promises of God are irrevocable. Nobody on earth can say that Israel can't annex this land. This is not Israel's land to annex. It's Israel's land, period.
Well, and Troy, you've been actually speaking out a lot about replacement theology lately, and it's been showing up, in today's discourse quite a bit. So what's your best 1-minute Bible-grounded rebuttal?
Read Romans chapter 11. That's the 1 minute, okay? Look, John MacArthur just passed away. John MacArthur is one of the leading theologians of the 20th, 21st century. I would argue that probably a lot of pastors around here have a commentary of his or some book of his in their library, in their studies or whatever. And John MacArthur, who's, a lot of times the Reformed community is where this replacement theology is. But here's one of the leading Reformed pastors, theologians, and he called it simply heresy from the pit of hell. And he said, let's just say what it really is. It's anti-Semitism disguised. That's what it is. You can't read the scriptures. Go read Romans 11. We are the wild olive branches grafted into the cultivated olive tree. And Paul says it straight. If we get arrogant, if we get too haughty, what happens when the root dies? The branches are dead too.
So, Troy, you have talked a lot about the need to get these messages across, but in the end, people are really in media today looking for clicks and needing to get read or watched, but clicks are not the same, obviously, as conviction. So how do you recommend measuring whether a story actually deepens that biblical understanding and long-term support for Israel, or is just, to get some clicks?
Look, yeah, we can all create clickbait, and that's to get the rapid piece. But look, we have one thing that these guys said is on our side. The biggest thing on our side, we have the truth. We have the truth on our side, and the scriptures tells us, and the truth will set you free. And so I'll tell you what the biggest thing is when we see a change in society. We look at the great reformations or the great revivals that came through America, and the biggest indication of those revivals wasn't about people going to church, it was society changed its thought and how it acted. It stopped going to bars, it stopped going to brothels, sales of liquor plummeted. You didn't need to do any laws. That happened because people's hearts and minds are changed. So that's how we have to look at what we're doing. We're fighting a battle of hearts and minds. We're fighting a battle of ideologies, of worldview, and every time we post, we have to remember that we're not trying to get clicks, we're trying to get people.
So with that, Troy, give us something practical. We need a practical playbook here. It sounds good, but how do we do it? Give me a resource, one action that Christian media outlets can take right now, this month, in order to affect that change. Every single Christian media group in here, if you don't have already, go find a media savvy Gen Zer, Gen Yer, train them up on what it means to be a Christian and support Israel, and turn them loose, okay? You all need to have rapid response media teams in your ministry. Not reply to a tweet 2 days later, 4 days later, a week later. When you see something come up that you know is not true, respond to it right now, right away. Here's the truth. This is a lie. This is false. This is propaganda. Call it for what it is and give the truth and do it like that.
Wow, Troy Miller, thank you so much.
Thank you all.